All right, everybody, welcome into the Fifth Dimension podcast. For today's show, I was joined by San Qing. He's been a practicing Taoist for over 30 years, host of the Way 126 Experience podcast. And I got to tell you, man, this one is phenomenal, epic. I almost can't put it into words how profound and electric that it truly was. Because as we were going through this conversation, I could just kind of feel my own vibration and just frequency just raising and raising. And I'm like, when I got off of it, I had to get up and jump around because I'm like, this is it. We kind of hit on some of the deepest truths on the nature of reality. And I really hope you guys enjoy this one as much as I did because there is a lot that we unpack. There is a lot that we explore, and it all comes back to the heart and the resonance behind San's message and truths that he is speaking to. So I hope you guys enjoy it like I did. If you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe whatever platform you are on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it may be, Twitter even. Click that subscribe button. 5 stars. Leave us a review. It does help the algorithms and more people ultimately find the show. And you can subscribe to my Substack, mcdermott.substack.com, mcdermod.substack.com. This is really your number one spot to interact with me. Be notified of every podcast in your inbox, poem, essay, whatever it may be, alerts on new books. Just subscribe on Substack. It's free to do so. So you're missing out if you're not on the Substack, because a lot of it, there's some early access stuff and content that you're only going to see on there. So if you're a fan of the show, that's a great way to support and also just be notified when the Fifth Dimension is launched. You can also book a tarot reading with me. That's right. One-on-one tarot sessions are available. You can go into it with a guided meditation experience to start, set our intentions, ground, dive into the tarot reading, and really unpack what it is that you are seeking to explore. And you can book, it's in the episode show notes below. Use the code 5D on checkout. Get 20% off. It's a good deal. And if you buy 2 tarot readings, you get a third one on the house. So it's a good way to explore some of the longer term and see how it's playing out in real time. Link to do that, episode show notes below. And you can also purchase all my poetry books. They're available on Amazon. The Final Judgment is the most recent one. There's also To Martial Love Against Tyranny and the Mystical Collection. All of them are available on Amazon. And the links to those are in the episode show notes below. And special thank you to our one and only sponsor, Tranquil Desires, here in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Your one-stop shop. All your holistic wellness, spiritual needs. If you stop in, let Patty know that Evan from the Fifth Dimension sent you. Let's jump into the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is a good one, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Give it up for San Qing. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome into the Fifth Dimension podcast. For today's show, I am joined by another brother who is regularly embodying that fifth dimension consciousness. So a very fitting guest, San Qing. He has been practicing Taoism for 30 plus years, host of the Way 126 Experience podcast, and him and I have had a few mutual guests. So, we're very aligned in our areas of research and interest. So it's great to have you on the show, brother. I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you, brother. Happy to the end of one year and in the opening of a new one. We're in the perfect spot right now. I'm very grateful to be here to share a little light on whatever it is that we want to get into. You know what I'm
Right
saying?
on. Absolutely, absolutely, man. And I'd love to start if you could kind of give anyone who maybe is not familiar with you, your work, what it is that you're embodying and your principles. How would you kind of bring that to the table and share what you, whether it's Taoism, your podcast, just kind of give a little scope.
Yeah. Well, I had a pretty magical, mystical experience, over 30 years ago that sort of fast forwarded me into looking for and finding inquiry to get answers to this magical, mystical insight. And it moved through in a period of a week, I went from never meditating to channeling my teacher that I commune with on a daily basis to witnessing physical healing, adopting and remembering clairvoyant capabilities. And it just was an unraveling that happened within a 5-day period. Then I had an equivalent to a dark night of the soul. And then that went on for 5 days, and I was tuned up to self-realization of my immortal self in this physical flesh. And it was summarized in that. If anyone's interested in the stories, they can go dig in on the interweb. They'll find plenty of them. But that kind of fast forwarded me into getting and embodying my relationship with the Tao, with my teachers. And so channeling is my bag. And that's really the highest level of essential for a Taoist, is getting direct source information, making it repeatable, making it verifiable in this material, which is key. I pretty much summarize it as such. If we had to go for the physics lens of reality, it's light to wave to matter to particle, realized with your attention, intention, cutting from the cloth of perfection, the primordial mother that you got right now, that realization exposed in this currency that we use within this electromagnetism, and we define it and craft that with our attention, intention, forming what my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin would call it dukkha, distortion. This is a energetic potential that has been realized, and we are now crafting that. And with that offering comes this incredible gift. We call this a vibratory frequential state of being. And when you access that and you resonate with what that is, it becomes yours. Oh, yes, it will. And so now it's on the journey of resonance. It's on the journey of mastery. And I find that is very self-evident in Taoist alchemy. And so when we get down with the Taoist alchemy, this material that we operate in, the currency, which is the polarizing effects of a duality, which is electromagnetism, this is the seeker's path to find the Vesica, the center point we call the Wu Ji, which is the primordial mother. And that is evident in all things. And once you find that, you hook into that resonance, and then you start repeating it, you start cultivating it, and it becomes realized within this material that you are unified in a dualistic state. And then therefore you create what people call supernatural experiences, manifestation, magic, healing. All these things are realized from that awareness, and you have to craft it. It has to be repeatable. It has to be not a delusionary transitory state of the limited mind. It has to be all-encompassing and unified, and that comes from the cultivational practice. And alchemy, Taoist alchemy is second to none. I'm a fanboy, being an ordained priest. But the reality is, as a seeker to a knower, there must be a progressive method to the madness. The method to the madness helps you solidify what would be transitory or not permanent to become permanent as you cross over this line we call Wu Ji. As you enter that, this effectively, once you cultivate it, the primordial mother is evidence of unification. And then you see that in your journey as Wu Wei, which means effortless action, effortless effort. And this doesn't come from the limited ego mind, the personality. That is empty. It's vacuous. There's nothing there. That's why you continue to repeat the very limited conscious state that you're in until you realize that your consciousness spans all things. And so from a Taoist perspective, the lens is quite simple. We take the yin and yang symbol, we lay it down as a template upon reality, and you find that center point. You hold that resonance, you maintain it, and then you are now in a state of unification, giving you evidence of self-mastery. So you have imperium over this 50 trillion cells of flesh and blood that looks back before you in the mirror, that speaks to you as identity. Is nothing more than an anchor in this reality, and you blossom into the unified state, meaning that you have imperium over all things. You're all things and nothing at the same time. And your job, your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hawke, is to find that center point. define that Death Star moment where you hit that center point. That charge you and I get right now is evidence of that. That's the excitement. It's the palpability, the tangibility of what we speak of. That electromagnetism is now unified within our biofields. We are evident. We are creating this, as someone would call it, within hypnosis or a psychological state, a psychodynamic loop, which is the unification of energy. And you're feeling it as it is not temporary. You're experiencing this. I move my hands, you feel the energy. This is what we call psychokinesis. This is what we call the beginning and evidence of telepathy, clairvoyance, pyrokinesis. If you go deep enough into the alchemy, we turned lead into gold. This is not just a metaphor. This is realized inside the internal energetic components that are you, which is evident in all indigenous practices. So we further go from inquiry to contemplation, from contemplation to curiosity. Curiosity forms hope. Hope is then realized as a belief system. That belief system is nurtured through repeatability, which then furthermore gives you blossoming effects of knowing, because you're able to experience it. There's nothing more powerful than the present moment. That is all we have. And when you can actually quantify it and qualify it through this material, then it becomes real to you. And there's a point of no return where you detach and attach as all things. So we use this basically lens, the yin and yang, and we look at reality as a bellows. That's it. Everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. So the limited, finite mind is moved aside, and you're able to reveal that the identity is the very distraction and the unraveling of your reality. Because once you move out of the way, you don't need to do anything. It's present. You are present. The unification is evident. Your struggle with the ideas and the concepts and the energetically charged limitation of the mental, emotional, and spiritual state that seems to be separate from all teaching, but in reality it is one. Then you find the said evidence. Now you're getting down with the get down. Now you're able to realize it, and it is true to you. It's true to others. It's not a limited state which goes through the mind and it comes and goes like a flash in the pan. You're able to realize it. That's the power that you harness. And so with that, here we are today exploring all things, all possibilities, because we're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. Other than that, I'm having a good day, brother.
I love it. I love it. You know, that might be one of the best, like, quick crash course definitions to understand the nature of reality in such a digestible, compactable way that I've ever heard. Like, kudos. Like, that was like a symphony. Sitting here listening to it, and it charging me up already. I'm like, oh my goodness, and I love that. And it's it's interesting because I've slowly over time, I feel like I've always known this, but you continue to reaffirm, you get more mystical experiences, you start having synchronicities line up to where this truth becomes undeniable. And it's like I look back to 10 years ago or something. For me, it's like, how did I not see this, understand this, feel this? I already, in a way, I knew it, yet I didn't fully, it was difficult to grasp, right? And I feel like that's where so many people are. They know there's that deeper element, and they know that this ego and this physical body, it's limited, but it's all they know. So the truth is much more unexplainable. And so I don't know if people in, explore it because they don't know where to explore. They don't know how to explore it. It's something that's not quantifiable in a world that's very mind oriented. Therefore, we could, how are we supposed to explore it? You need something concrete. You got almost got to like feel into it, right? It's something that is deeper.
That's part of the alchemy. I
Mm.
always remind people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling.
Mm.
And that becomes realized. That's that self-mastery, that self-realization is the experiential moment of repeatability.
Yeah.
Once you repeat it, it's like, oh, I have imperium over this state. I am all things. I can access information instantaneously. That's why these exploration of what we define within Taoism, just sensory perception, which is basically what we call the Shen, which is the spirit on steroids in the material.
Mm.
And so now you have what some indigenous practices, I refer to some yogic sort of like a theory, would be a siddha, an ability, a superpower. This is just very much the realization of the supernormal reality once you access that resonance. And all of a sudden you access information instantaneously.
Mm.
And it becomes repeatable when I can walk up to someone I've never met before and give them what I would consider a psychic reading and give them their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state inside of 30 seconds by reading. I'm not identifying. This is the very fundamental unraveling of someone's journey to validate, is to just read the information, receive the information, and then return the information. And then all of a sudden people are like, holy moly, because what most healers have is this very corrupted, distorted view of reality where, I'm a light worker, I'm a guru, I'm a healer, I'm a priest, there's an identity issue that takes place. Now, when you understand that you are all things, which is why I believe Taoism is so powerful, it's like a equivalent to a Gnostic path where know thyself, and it comes in the form of the experience, and then it becomes realized because you can repeat it. All these superpowers, these supernormal abilities of clear sense are realized through this sort of mastery, and you start to realize, okay, when I'm not invested in it, that I need someone to give me their approval that I'm the next coming of Jesus or I'm a healer, and these are the things that people get caught up in. It's like, oh, did you feel that? Oh, how was that? Was I accurate? I don't have to ask for the permission or the need for validation because I already know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes in the information. And when you read it like a menu, all of a sudden people are like, how'd you do that? Well, I'm just looking at the energy. So my lens of reality is fundamentally different, and you activate it through the imagination. But these are part of the ancient Taoist alchemy practices where you turn these states on, and it's just like I'm looking at a computer screen that has a million icons. Mm-hmm. And wherever I look at the icon, it reveals the information through the energy potential. You find the center point. For a human being, they have 9 energy centers. We call them dantians. We go through those dantians, which is equivalent to what we define as the energy or elixir field. And within that, we reveal the Nidan, which is the internal alchemy, which enforces and fortifies Nigong, which is the internal power. And so when you read that, we'll get a very clear access to deficiency of each energy center and what that means from an emotional to a virtue state. And that fundamentally just gives you a very clear understanding of who that person is. Mm-hmm. And when you read it off and they go, holy shit, how did you do that? It's just information, my friend. I'm not invested in you telling me, oh my goodness, that's amazing. This is the part where when people move out of the way and they put down the very limited ego state, the personality, it's all accessible, which returns to my teacher, Jade Emperor, and one of his very clear lenses of realization is when he reminds you, when you know nothing, you know everything. Mm-hmm. And that's allowing to move out of the way and be present with who you really are, that unified state. Mm-hmm. And when you're present, everything is accessible at once. You're not caught up in the identity politics that would corrupt you through the emotional content, because it all has a charge to it, all has energy potential. And this is where people get deluded. They get caught up in the trauma, the trigger. There's a process of keeping you in your humanness. Human beings are so powerful. The true human state of consciousness does not it's not limited by the condition, which is what most people get trapped in. So when you understand that sentience is the key, that accessing through the resonance, what happens is it's undeniable. You cannot fight it. You cannot fight the feeling. I think that's a song. I can't remember. But when you get to that resonance, all of a sudden, servitude and selflessness is your programming. That's it. And you're like, hang on a second. People get really strange because they look at me and go, you can't hold a grudge. I don't know what a grudge is. Well, it wouldn't matter if you unraveled in front of me and revealed yourself as Satan or some demonic beast. In 5 seconds from now, we're going to commune with this unified state, and you're going to replenish yourself, because it's that deficiency, that is that desire, that they gravitate to the wrong thing, or they're gravitating to the right thing, but they don't understand how to put it back into their perfection, return it so that you unleash your energy potential. You're not limited by that.
Right.
I just take a little breather there.
I love it, brother. I love it. And what you're speaking to is really it's rooted deeply for, thousands of years. Like this is a timeless truth of the nature of who we are. So where along the way do these seeds of disconnect and this ego, the framework that we are so caught up in this society nowadays? I mean, if we look at most of human history, I mean, there's a lot of history that's a bunch of nonsense, surely, and we can't really get the full scope. I think there were times where civilizations did embody and harness this truth, right? And were living around and centered around this. I think there were times like that where the collective at large had that. But that's kind of besides the point. Where are the seeds and the roots of this disconnect now stemming from? Why are more people not embodying and recognizing and ultimately living this? Because the potentials for us now is so much higher than what it is that we have actually actualized and are living in. Because we've barely scraped the surface in our society to unlocking our own true power, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. What a great question! Because I mean, truly, if you look at the human timeline, it's quite evident that we went array. We were unraveled, we were delusional, and we got misdirected when science threw away the magical, mystical aspect of their measurement of reality, and furthermore, nurtured this thing we call psychology and made it as part of a lens of determining what reality is for the seeker. And so psychology, in my opinion, is the very evidence of delusion, because now you're attributing the psychosomatic state of the individual as being corrupted. But in an evidence of that, when you speak on psychosomatic, it means your mind is creating a feeling in your body. Yes, it is. Actually, it is. And it's not a discontent if you understand that your mind is the body, and that you are experiencing it from a vibratory, like a frequential state, that you are getting evidence. But they would furthermore corrupt it by telling you, hey, by the way, you know what? No, you're actually deluded, that your mind is making all this up. So your mind is just this separate little compartmentalized offering of, at that time, that would be more evident, would be Newton's theory or Newton's law of reality, cause and effect, that's the only answer that you have, that you must be really sort of like kept in that. And then furthermore, you start adding another lens of reality, like, what was that? Darwin's theory, how you, and in essence, really, the world is still corrupted with these three ideas of what reality is. And, to equalize overpopulation, we must use a couple of ingredients like, famine, war, a virus. These are still being used today. And they're being used very effectively, but there's nothing more powerful than corrupting the mind. And this is where we're starting to see that through these offerings of the technocrats' devices. So when someone embodies the social sphere and they get enthralled by, access to abundant information, overwhelming amount of information that you don't have the ability to affirm or discern what it is, because there's just so much of it that you're getting all these mixed meanings because you're twisted within the idea that you are the mind and not the body, mind, and spirit. And so that makes you limited. The psyche becomes corrupted even more with the identity. And so when you get into something like shorts or social accounts where you are getting into the weeds of just overload of information, there is a cycle that is it's called the fractionated state, and it's derived from the material. So they're manipulating your dopamine responses by watching shorts. Mm-hmm. 1 minute it's fear, 1 minute it's happiness, 1 minute it's sex, 1 minute it's sadness, and by doing this, you're fundamentally corrupting your neurological system, and furthermore, your endocrine system then starts to crash, and then your ability to take charge of that, you become separated, you become exhausted, you become bankrupt. Mm. And this is the very unraveling of social media. And that's why it can be a complete hindrance for most people, unless they have charge and don't accept. When you realize, and that's why the feeling is it outweighs anything else. We're playing this symbiotic relationship right now as we're dancing between the energy, we're oscillating, we're experiencing it, we're feeling it, it's visceral, it's kinesthetic, it's somatic. That's what's going right now. The communion we're having is clear. It's evident we are unified, and we can show that through our expression on the outside, and then the energy potential on the inside that is being played with as we move through this, through our conversation. Those words are not empty words anymore. Those words have a charge. Those words, the linguistic becomes imbued with this incredible power that is that unification, and then it bleeds out into the reality, and you become all things and nothing. All of a sudden, you are the puppet master to the puppet. Mm-hmm. And so wherever your attention intention goes, you create from that, because that is the default. You are a creator, not a corruptor, or furthermore, a consumer, which so many people are. They're not actually embodying that. Mm-hmm. They are letting it play with the very limited states of the ego mind, the mental, psychological state, and then they're identifying with it. So the social media gets super corrupted. So there is this evidence from a physiological, psychological state, and furthermore spiritual, that we're being taught to believe they're all separate. Mm-hmm. And that you're disempowered, and that truly your function is being a victim, and that victimhood will present itself through this one event after another, which is a thought, feeling, and emotion that gets a charge. Once it's sufficiently charged, you create this environment that would be equivalent to a timeline. And then if you refer it back to a psychological state, furthermore, they would refer to it as a trauma or a trigger that then, I have identity. Once again, identity. Never before in my journey consciously, and I've been witnessing mental, emotional, physical, spiritual healings for over 30 years, do I ever do anything other than just breathe in and out? Mm. And because of the alchemical process, I can be that now moment and experience all the energy potential as it is right now, vibratory, frequential, and holding that resonance then affects change within what we call the primordial cloth of perfection. And so you cut from that cloth and you create the distortion, and then you have to meet it with that frequential state and hold that resonance. Most people, they go through the state and I'm a healer, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a psychologist, whatever it is. It's all a beautiful starting point. There is no right or wrong. I want people to be very clear. But what happens is, if you do not create a container that can hold that resonance, it will be lost. So in most cases, you get the people that get all excited about healing, and I'm a light worker, I'm a massage therapist. in their very corrupted, bankrupt state is, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, because they're sacrificing their life force instead of realizing that unified state is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. We always speak on that. So when we look at reality as a bellows, we look at it that way, but we always are reminded man is not like that. So man will be exhausted. So if you identify as this flesh and blood that looks back before you in the mirror, you will come to realize that that currency can be spent very quickly, instead of realizing that once you tune the energetic potential and you regulate it, you have unlimited abundance, timeless, endless. And of course, this is the very state of who you are. This is the true nature of who you are. But there is a Sherlock to your Watson. I like the magical mystery ride of picking up the crumbs. Elementary, my dear Watson. And when you find that, then it becomes real to you because you're experiencing it. And so this game of delusion has been going on for some time, and we're aware of it. Incredible channels like yourself, my channel, all the incredible people that we speak to. We're sobering up to the supernatural abilities that really are supernormal, and we're starting to level that up. But you can only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know, and this is the struggle that people that identify as the human condition, identify as the personality, identify as the ego, will be very limited. There's nothing to get there. You're thinking. Once you're thinking, all you're doing is accumulate more thoughts that don't amount to anything, because it's not verifiable. It's just like a contemplation. Until realized as an experience, it means nothing. And so many people will talk, they'll listen to our conversation, but, oh yeah, I get that. We're all things and nothing. Yep. Okay. So I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. You got to show me. I'll do the taste test with anybody. It's like, if that is true, and the seeker will experience that, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know this. Okay, explain to me your reality. How's it going for you? Oh, yeah, it's a little rough around the edges, and I've got this problem and that problem and this problem. Now, I've had many conversations with a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell. I don't know whether you're familiar with who he is. And so we've had conversations, and the reality is all of this stuff that we're talking about today, my brother, can come down to the simplicity of this. To find that center point, is your glass half empty or full? That's really what this is. What the raw tax of all things is, this simplicity, and it's being able to be in the now moment to realize that. And so when you start to embody all things, you'll know your ascension, because that will come in the form of selflessness and servitude, and you will find perfection in everything. It will be impossible for you to not find perfection, no matter who it is, what it is, how it is, and bring that resonance. And for a Taoist, basically the journey of a Taoist is to contribute as an ambassador to planet Earth, to raise the frequency, to raise the resonance, so that humanity recognizes their sentience. Humanity recognizes the unification through the empathy, that people are so corrupted with, they're so detached from. And when that happens, as a collective, even if we look at it, the simplicity of the alchemical process that you and I are talking about, through something like as simplistic as divinity, and divinity will show itself through a lens of something more like a hypnotist state of mind, an ideomotor response. You can identify through this transmission within the physical flesh what is your version of contracting and expanding. We're experiencing it now. It is happening right now. And you can feel the charge, you can feel the restriction, you can feel the expansion, and it will be evident. Now, you want to make sure that you're not coming from a lens of corruption, in the sense of redefining and validating your self-realization. So it's like, okay, I feel this certain way, I contract to this and I expand to that. Okay, so let's determine whether this is valid by your experience, by seeing result. Oh, this happened 3 times, and without fail, 3 times I was given the correct answer or experience or the person, the energy. Now I know that I'm tuning myself. But there's all these different ways to verify the experience so that you don't become deluded and your hardware is all, messed up, corrupted, as you would say.
Right. And that corruption is so prevalent in today's society. But and you said something that was so beautiful and magnificent. To just start to come back to it, all you need to do is breathe, to come back to the breath. All the power is already within us. And, I think people sometimes when we look at these concepts, it's a different thing to to hear this and you were kind of alluding to this, to know it on an intellectual level, right? For me, when I started getting into spirituality and I read the Tao and I was very into Buddhism and I was knowing it at first intellectually because I didn't have the proper uh I just didn't understand how to embody it and actually
How to measure it.
experience it,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
and measure it and bring it into a container. But it's like, okay, I can understand it intellectually, but the world around me and my own relationship to the world and my own identity didn't necessarily change. And so I think sometimes within spiritual communities is very prevalent. We can intellectualize these concepts and then create almost a new form of ego based on the intellectualization and then just play the same game as before instead of actually opening up and embodying it and then walking through life on an entirely different channel, right? that's I think that's a very common phenomenon in today's society, and it's kind of why we're seeing all the things take place at the collective level that we are seeing, and people's minds are being more and more warped, and certainly the technology is being created to continue that warping. But yeah, man, that intellectualization I think is such a key aspect that doesn't get touched on enough. Because then once you lose the intellectualization, you actually start embodying. That's when the magic starts to happen. That's when you start to really experience, and you can kind of go from um, needing to go all the time and needing to seek to actually to just kind of flow, and then the knowledge and the truth, it finds you. Like you don't actually like you just kind of open yourself up to it, and boom, here it is. You see it. It's all around, And I think that's the real beauty in the process. Once you can kind of take on that step, like enter into that part of it. Maybe intellectualizing it is necessary at first to some degree, but at what point do you go
But
from
you have to embody it.
intellectual? Yeah, when do you go from intellectual to embodying? I think it just maybe takes a leap of faith of some sort, or just a
Well, you have to have evidence.
hmm,
That's your Sherlock to your Watson. I mean,
yeah,
it's transitory. It's not permanence. If you cannot validate it and repeat it for yourself, it's a delusional state. And you stay there. You stay corrupted within that little cycle of your own vacuum. And you just keep telling yourself what you want to hear, not the actual truth. And that currency, people find themselves bankrupt and corrupted and empty, vacuous, but not in a way that it is all knowing it's all things, but in a way that they are just almost beyond nihilism. They're just like,
mhm,
they have no, they're not swayed to anything. Now, I will bring attention to the caveat that there is a point where you go to the point of no return where you collect $200 and you go past go.
mhm,
But that is the mastery of the alchemical process. So, as to your point, into intellectualize to then realize is from thought to feeling,
mhm,
and when you repeat it, then there's no delusion. So, teaching people all these different sensory perceptions, as I put it, is important on their journey of self-realization. When you can embody the unification state within the electromagnetism, then you see evidence of, I'm insight into information. I'm channeling energies. I'm healing. I'm witnessing this unification of this resonance. And when people are in the presence of it, it shows with the reforming and defaulting of their physical body. So what I was getting to is a lot of people get healings, right? They get transmissions and healings and all this stuff. But if they're still corrupted themselves, it will be very transitory. It will be very limited, and it will not hold the line of resonance because they cannot hold that line. Just imagine this. Imagine you're going into a gym and you've never lifted before, and someone gets you under a bar, a squat, and they put 300 pounds on the bar, and you're like, oh my goodness. And then they spot you and you squat the weight. You do it once and you're like, oh my goodness, I felt that. I mean, the person was supporting me. I was able to lift it. Now, if you can't go back the next day and lift the same weight, the evidence is that it wasn't holding the ability to strengthen that. There was more of a nurtured timeline that's necessary to embody that strength. This comes in the same form of the spiritual path of self-realization. Is once you do things in this material, it only grows on itself. So there is a diminished point of return within the physicality, and that will be shown. Exercise is an example of that. You can put time and attention to something, and it only holds as long as you are able to maintain it. This is not the same within the electromagnetism that you find the unification in, because in that state, you build on it and it only grows. It never diminishes, because the more and more you remember who you are, the more and more it becomes evident, and you are like tapping into the abundance, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite potential of who you are. And you see more of that. And then all of a sudden say, oh my goodness, the return is exponential. It's amazing. Whereas physically, and if you embody the limitation of separating the psyche from the body itself, you will fall victim to the corruption. You'll fall victim to the thoughts. You'll fall victim to the identity, which will then corrupt you on a physical level, because you're always a creator. So when people go, well, how do I know I'm manifesting? You just manifested instantly a sickness. And now you're sick, you can be well. I mean, it just happened recently with someone. They were like, oh my goodness, I think there's a flu going around. And then the next day they're calling up going, Jifu, I've got the flu. I'm like, and now the polar opposite of that is to be well. And so now embody that state and realize that you are unified and there is no limitation to your true self. And of course, within 8 hours, they're like, oh my goodness, I had the chills. I was feeling like I was going to throw up. It's gone. I'm like, damn straight it is. Now that can be materialized instantaneously. And sometimes, depending upon where the student is, I might sprinkle some fairy dust to just help them along, because they need a re-up. They need to get some experience behind the game of this reality, which is being able to validate it for themselves. Oh my goodness, this really happened. I was literally feeling like I was going to die. I had the flu. I had this, and it's gone. Yes, because it comes back to that breath, my brother. And so the breath is the very evidence for a Taoist. So we look at the lens of the bellows. Then we, through further inquiry, go deeper into between the breath in and the breath out is what we call the Wu Ji. That's where the primordial mother lies. And as you activate the energy potential from holding that breath, you create this condensing, what we call absorbing the riches, where it starts to saturate the cell and it forms what we call the hardness, which is the diamond of perfection, which is basically all things within this reality. And you have what we call, I have a dialogue with my teachers giving me the information that some people would call the Akashic records, the halls of Amente, source information, God, universe, Buddha. How you access it, it will be verified by you and others through your experience. But that's the dialogue that I have with the monologue, which is perfection. So one of the facets is this dialogue of the diamond of perfection. And that is the monologue that is the primordial mother. And it will be present in everything. You become the immortalized, realized state of every thought, feeling, and emotion is expressed through this divinity. And when you tie a knot, it cannot be undone. When you close a door, it cannot open, because you're embodying that unification, and your attention, intention is all powerful, all knowing, all now.
100%. And the beauty of that is the infinite nature of it, really just this realization process is just a lifting of the veil, and you recognize that it is always present. It's not like when we're deluded in our own mind. It's not like this infinite abundance and beauty and all and this energy that you're speaking of. It's not like it goes away. If anything, it's still interacting with us, but feeding back our own delusion. And I think that's a lot of times people can confirm their own delusions because that's what they're looking for. That's what they manifest. They manifest a disease, they manifest chaos, they manifest exactly what it is that they fear, right? And so in a way, the nature of the reality is what the if we're in the way that we're speaking of, we're doing it um in abundance and in beauty because we recognize the game, and it's like, wow, what this is masterful, this is wonderful, right? In the same way, when we're unconscious of it and we view life as chaos and we view Earth as a prison planet or whatever it may be, right? And we're in fear, we're gonna have that feedback to us, right? It's that same feedback loop. It's that same relationship, only it's so unconscious that that unconsciousness is driving it and feeding that. And so the, I think I would encourage people to take a look at their own life and kind of reflect, what is the energy I'm putting out in the universe? What is the relationship that I have with it at the moment? And is my own, I always like to try and challenge people. Can I recognize that all of this is directly my own responsibility and my own creation? Right. And I think even that saying, even if someone's life is in pure shambles and chaos and whatnot, if you can actually take the ownership for it and the responsibility, it kind of opens up a portal to for some magic and to say, well, I created shambles and I created turmoil. Why can't I create something that's more resonant out of this, like from the ashes, and sort of reborn into a phoenix, right? And have a beautiful awakening and rebirth beyond just this material and identity, right? And I think that's a powerful lens to kind of, I would say, gain perspective on. But if anything, it is just a lifting of the veil. It's the recognizing this is always here because this is what reality is. It's not something we need to even go out in the world and find. It's all around, just when the you tune into it more so than even need to find it.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is mirroring.
Hmm.
Everything is mirroring, but it again returns to the simplicity of yin and yang.
Yeah.
See, so we don't look at things in a finite mind state of limitation through a identity. So we're not looking at dark and light. It's just yin and yang, and people are like, "Whoa!" It's like this wisdom teaching has been around for tens of thousands of years, longer than that. I'd put myself out and say it's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, through my own teachers, they've shown me evidence of that. Now, on a human timeline, there's quite clear evidence that one of my teachers, Yellow Emperor, started that journey back in 6000 BC.
Hmm.
And there was evidence of oracle bone reading and pictographs that were being used to document the experience and then the creation of what we know as the Chinese culture today, that is formally more solidified within traditional Chinese medicine. But Taoist alchemy was the original seed of power that comes from any sort of like Chinese cultivational practice. All the Chinese pillars of Chinese medicine return back to Taoist alchemy because that's the most powerful currency, the electromagnetism. This is what you speak of when you were talking about that. It's quite clear because that's the currency that we work in. Now,
Yeah.
your ability to bring in something that has imperium over that is the unification. And then it's more evidence for yourself and others around you. As you hold that resonance, you're able to repeat it and show it to the world that this is really the truth, not the very limited identity that comes with the ego state. And this is where you get corrupted. But you'll see it. It will come in that form. So when we condense the diamond and you form that, it becomes a center point. That's your vesica. And then you reveal This through all the alchemical process. So when you put your attention intention to something, it's formed, it's created, it's realized. You return to that state. Whether it's a physical healing, a mental, emotional, spiritual healing, these are the things that kind of get me all warm and fuzzy. And I get, hundreds of people a year, sometimes in a month, that will come to me and go, "You're that guy. I was told that you could help me. My grandmother's in hospital. They're telling her she's going to die in 24 hours. She's on a deathbed. She's in a coma." And, I'll just tap in and go, "No, we're all good." And they're like, what do you mean we're all good? No, she's very clear that she's not going anywhere. And it seems sort of phenomenally unreal until they experience it. Because what's happening is I'm just tapping in to the present moment as no place, no person, no thing. Even though you can see identity. Oh, this is San Qing. He's a Taoist priest. For me to obtain or to bear witness to such evidence is frequential. That's it. And that will come in that resonance, and people will feel it. They will feel the evidence of that. They will see the evidence of that. And then, of course, grandma will come out of the coma the next day, and the doctors are like, "What the hell is going on?" Because even from a NASA physicist scientific lens, from my dear friend Tom Campbell, he would attribute that to what they call the large consciousness system, which is part of his my big toe, his theory of everything. And by attention intention, you're shifting the probability. So if we were to try and water it down to a physics model, and that he attributes his findings, his zeros and ones, his theories that are now transmuted into peer-reviewed science to validate his version of reality, that when I share these types of things with him and he's experienced them himself, he's like, "Oh yeah, your attention intention has changed the probability of what is going to take place." And when it happens, it's that quickly. And so from a visual perspective, for me, I commune with the mother, I speak with her, the energy then becomes more amplified. We return the energy back to her because she's deficient, right? So she becomes whole through the resonance. And then I see her embody that energy, and it ignites into almost like these phosphorus white flames through her whole physical body. And then she creates a golden halo and an auric field around her physical body. And then she reignites. The energy becomes complete. It's returned back to her. And this is how I see it. This is how people experience it. But it's a now moment.
Yeah.
There's no place, no person, no thing. First person, third person, no person. And so there's no identity here. It's not like, "Oh, San Qing is hanging out." No, because I am the primordial mother. I don't have to say I am. I don't have to remind myself of who I am. It's now. So that now merges with grandma. Grandma has a conversation with unified state of knowing, which is perfection. And furthermore, poof, we get a probability shift that went from, "Oh my goodness, chances are grandma's going to die," to, "Holy crap, she woke up out of a coma and her vitals are regulated." And these type of miracles I've witnessed for 30 years, my friend. You name it, I've seen it,
Right.
Like crazy stuff, like gangrenous flesh turning back to pink in color in 40 minutes, bones fuse, gashes opening flesh up, things coming out of the body, closing up before my very eyes, and other witnesses. And these are the types of things that are very supernormal. And it's about a resonance. And, what's most important on your journey as a seeker to a knower is to not become fixated on them, because they're exciting. This is the mystical, magical ride of a Taoist seeker, the alchemical process. And a lot of my students get into that, and some of them get a little distracted and they sort of sit in a certain state of awareness, and that's completely okay. Understand that for you to continue your ascension process, this will return you to whole, and your need for obsession of that will be unnecessary. You won't be desirous of this need to keep repeating this. I've come across 3 people in my lifetime that can levitate.
Mm.
Two of them were Indonesian gurus in the Indonesian jungles, and the third one was one of my students. And then people are like, hang on a second. Well, how come you could teach someone to levitate, but you can't do it yourself? I'll tell you why. Because I don't care. It doesn't excite me. You
Right.
have to come from a place of excitement, desire, creativity. Now, this, when I speak to you on this, and your whole body gets charged with energy and you feel it like you are right now, it's like, holy moly, I am in the now moment. And this is the very secret source that will show you evidence, because that's how quickly physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing takes place. And so, you start with something that's more on a smaller level that you feel digestible, and you start progressing, to a
Hmm.
point where, I've had up to 1,000 people in person do a group healing, and you just get high on your own supply. It's like everyone is at the same place of wanting self-realization. And when that is merged, holy moly, that is like,
Mm.
it's euphoric, it's bliss, it's heaven on earth is what we call it within Taoism. Furthermore, I would bring us to the attention of one of my teachers, Jed Emperor, and he has an incantation which goes something like this: power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And that somatic, visceral, kinesthetic experience is the very evidence of that magic. And it's unifying us in this communion with this present moment. And the primordial mother, the unification, is this energy potential that has become one. And now it's like wherever your attention intention goes, we just play with this thing we call substance, Fajing, where you are now playing with it. It's like, holy moly, you can feel this, and we're doing this right now because this is the evidence that you need to be
Hmm.
whole and to return and hold that resonance. Amen to that, brother.
Amen to that. I was going to say, I can feel it, and it is in the now. That is the
Right.
evidence right
Yeah.
sitting in here. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful to hold into that space. And what's interesting is experiencing this and knowing in this, it makes it impossible for me to be. And there's a lot of people in like the truth seeking community, for example, who get very black pilled or are very weary about the future, and mankind is doomed, right, because of X, Y, and Z, right? And there's certain nefarious agendas going on. And of course, there's things we need to be mindful about. But the fact that we can go into this space, and similar to how you just mentioned like medical miracles, for example,
Yeah.
right? If we envision the path for mankind to be one that is resonant and abundant, and we can actually envision this world that we would like to create, as opposed to really fixating on the negative or the black pill or how mankind is going to be enslaved, all these things, right? Which tends to happen in certain circles. If we can really hold the space for what we're envisioning and the energy that we're embodying here that is abundant and beautiful and infinite in its nature, and we actually go into that and we feel into it, and it makes that world an inevitability in the purest sense, right? I mean, because we're divinely creating it, divinely imagining it. And so it makes it impossible for me to be black pilled, because it's like, oh, we're going to create this. There's no other, that it is what it is. It's truth. It's right there. It's right here, right? And so, to me, this is what we're speaking on and what we're holding in our presence now. A lot of people want solutions. This is the answer that people are looking for, and it's in our own creative abilities and us holding this resonance, and then from there, allowing it to radiate from us as a divine conduit to the outer world, right? That's really all if we need to do anything, that's all we need to do.
Oh yeah, and I mean that experience is that validation. So if you dumb it down to a mentalist, and we're not talking about hermetic, we're just talking about someone who might be in the vein of David Blaine or Darren Brown or some type of illusionist, that they still have their own mastery. There's levels of the trickery that is actually a mastered guru state of awareness that they use on their audience, that is not just a suggestibility or a manipulation of the mind, but an actual experience or a sensory perception they've developed through their own journey. And a lot of them do this thing called PK touch, and PK touch would refer to psychokinesis. So your ability to enter the mind and the body through attaching yourself to the energy potential, just like we're literally experiencing this right now in this conversation. Is that I can move my hands here and you can feel it through your body where you are, which is in a logical sense impossible for most people to digest. Yet once you access the energetic potential, everyone has it. I could turn someone's energy body on in a fraction of a second, and all of a sudden now you are being aware of what the potential is within this currency. And that's where you don't have to ever be bankrupt again from that, because you're sacrificing your very constitution. So within Taoism, we refer to that as the Jing. So the Jing is the constitution of your physical body, your inherent disposition to whatever your DNA strand lies within your subatomic level. This is not what the truth is. This is just the starting point. Yet most people would say, well, that's where I lie. Unfortunately, my genetics suck, and I have this problem, that problem, this problem. Well, that's the very corruptor also, even though we discovered DNA back in the 70s, or I think it was 60s, from a human timeline. This is what we're working on at a subatomic level. So, we're experiencing the energy potential of everything. There are many things within the physical body that a neurologist, I would offer a very healthy conversation about. Someone that would say, you cannot feel your third eye. From any scientist's perspective, it's impossible, because it's not sympathetically innervated. There's no neural pathway that can give me evidence of the feeling of your third eye. Yet, once you obtain the access to the 50 trillion cells that you possess as energy potential, 0.07 millivolts of electricity, once you harness that as the maestro, you are now able to access everything down to a subatomic level of this physical flesh and blood. And it's experiencing. It's the now moment that makes it possible, and your cultivational practice that builds on itself. And that's why you want to build on it in what we call absorbing the riches. And furthermore, we go deeply into what we call chi packing. So you will embody the energy potential, saturate the cell. And we normally, I use the constitutional analogy, right? So you're born into this world with your own genetic disposition, whatever that might be. And let's just say you're 80% out of 100 as a battery pack. This is the battery pack. So with cultivating of Taoism, our realization, self-realization, is we are immortal. That's the truth, right? So through this alchemy process, you become self-realized as the immortal you really are. And then furthermore, you cultivate the energy potential within the physical body. So you're at 80% now, will bring you up to 100, from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000. Then you embody that immortal knowing, and then you are always tapped into the mother. So you never siphon the energy potential. You're never deficient or not whole. You're always whole, and you always know and remember the now moment. And that comes in that abundance, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite access to that unification. And that will show itself and present itself. Like I said, I had a 7.5-hour podcast with James. This, he and I just got started, didn't have a drink, didn't take a pee break, whatever. Same thing with Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell is another one. He's 80 years, a sprite young man. and he can sit there and throw it up with me all day. We don't take a
Yeah.
break. 3.5 hour conversations. And because when you are tapped into the primordial mother, you don't lack for anything. Your need or deficiency doesn't exist. So nourishing the physical body is unnecessary because it's already whole. So this gets you deep into the more self-realization practices. Once you start harnessing that alchemical process, you can literally embody, states of breatharian realization. And furthermore, for a Taoist, where the optimal effect is one meal every second day, and you'll feel like you're the ever-ready bunny rabbit who just doesn't. You just got so much juice, you don't know what to do with it. It's just like, and that's where you get evidence where you don't want to, at a physical level, add to something. So you got so much juice, and then you add, caffeine or sugar, and if you're not able to transmute it, then it becomes a realization of deficiency that will show itself in, anxiety, fear, all variables of emotional states that are transitory, because you're not able to transmute it. It's like when you know how to transmute it, it's like dropping this stuff on a fire, and it just burns right up into steam, which is an alchemical process that is more limited. When I teach people to access the primordial mother through the alchemical process, the lower dantian, which in most typical practices would be considered what they call the fire, it is not within this practice. It is the primordial mother. So it is, in essence, the element is transmuting into the moon and transmuting into the history of that, which is evident within yin. Yin. Yin is the absorption of all colors. And then yang, being the upper dantian, the sun, is the admission of all colors. And so these very fundamentals, when merged the two together, you are one, you're unified. And so all these things become very clear. So the old expression, turning water into wine, is absolutely not nonsense. It's realized, it's like these are the types of things where at a certain point from my own monastic path as a priest, one of the variables of cultivation was to be able to remove alcohol from a bottle and place it into water, a water bottle. And then what's further evidence? You have to drink that bottle in 60 seconds. And if it's not removed, you're going to get your stomach pumped, or, there is a level of realization through that. And so that has to be evident. And when I attribute it to the experience, it's a magnification. So when I draw on that alcohol, you see the form of it, and you're able to pull it out of the liquid that you would call the alcohol itself, the alcohol presence, that frequency, pull it out and drop it into a bottle of water and become self-realized. And it can only come from your experience. And, that's a fun little trick, but it's not really a trick. It's an ability to access the now moment and show it, not to yourself, but to others. And so all these sort of like sensory perceptions are developmental skills that are valid for the seeker on their journey to the knowing. And that's what's most important, is don't get too sidetracked by, the excitement. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not dismissing it, because we all go on that path. But if you just get obsessed with that one thing, and, I admit 30 years ago, I did the same thing. I was watching physical flesh transmute. So it's like my favorite thing was to rise sebaceous cysts up to the top of the patient's skin, and then watch them pop open like a lava from a volcano. And this was a thing that I would do over and over again, because it was just so profound. It was like, holy moly. And then I got myself straight, but like, it's every day to me, my friend, is like, I'm childlike in my nature. I accept everything at face value. This is the very thing that is the true state of now. When you look at children, I have 6 children, they're all like this. They'll wake up and they will embody their day, and they will be playing and creating, and before you know it, they're like at 6 o'clock, hey, Dad, I think I need something to eat. This is the evidence of where the energy is and where it lies, because with your attention intention, you create whatever it is created. It is sufficiently charged and it is energized, because that's what you do. So, if you want to observe perfection, observe a child. And instead of going through the rhetoric and the propaganda of you need to eat 3 meals a day, you need to eat 5 meals a day, you need to eat this, you need to eat that, the pyramid, all that absolute nonsense, you will come to realize that you will eat for sustenance. And if you choose to determine it as pleasure, you will become more and more mindful that the pleasure comes from within you. You don't have to take it on the outside and bring it in. It's already there. So no longer will you be corrupted by the limitation of the ego mind that I need this to feel whole. Like most people that are deficient from a lens of the emotional state, because if you're emotional, you're suggestible. That's just the true nature of this reality, which is a distorted currency. Part of that is recognizing the human condition is what it is. Let's listen to that again. The human condition. You are not. You are unlimited. You are eternal, immortal. That is the true nature of you. So to discover that, we must step past the limitation of the physical body. That's why immortality is such a cultivated state for a Taoist, and it's so important to embody the physical flesh and to maximize it. We have many things over history documenting Taoist teachers that have lived 200, 300, 400, 500 years, even in some cases 1,000. And so you are limited by nothing but the psyche when you compartmentalize it. And so if you start to believe, don't believe the hype, if you start to believe it, it will show itself. As a creator, you get corrupted and you will see it, because everything will show you the evidence of what is internally going on your external. So it's all there. It's all that mirroring effect of the yin and yang, because the yin is the absorption of all colors. The yang is the transmission and emission of all colors. When you merge the two together, you find the vesica point perfection. That's in everything. It doesn't matter where you look. You will find that center point. And the more you become developed in your sensory perception, you can read these frequencies and these vibratory states and be able to hold the resonance of everything. Everything has a resonance. And then the more and more you elevate yourself through these cultivational practices, you don't think it, you are it. You are the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual manifestation of divine word, will, light, love of the Tao. And you're like, holy moly, I can't fight the fate. My attempt to transmute it into something lesser or diminished, it's not possible. It just doesn't happen anymore. And that's the point of no return we speak of, where you are the now moment.
Beautiful, beautiful. How would you say, like, because a lot of us, we're trained to perceive reality simply through the 5 sensory perceptions of sight, vision, well, sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell, right? We limit our identities to really perceive the world and ourselves simply through those 5 lenses, right? And when we're talking about perceiving frequency and perceiving immortality, which is a truth at one of the deepest truths, it has to come outside of those 5 senses, right? So what would you like recommend? What are some of the teachings that allow people to start tuning in to other forms of perception that are not generally, I would say, honored in our current material society?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, I'll give the audience 3 more right now. So you have 5 senses, but you can say my name in your mind. You can hear my name in your mind. You can speak my name in your mind. There you go. There's 3 more. Right there, you're off to the races. Your limitation of sensory perception is 0. You are unlimited. So now it will show itself and present itself through the portal of imagination. So some people are more excessive or deficient within their sensory perception. So those five senses will show you where the seeker's deficiency or excess is. Then we balance that through the energy, and then you find that all of a sudden your imagination is alive. Whereas a lot of people, many people, some people are listen better, some people feel better, some people see better, some people smell better, some people taste. It depends on where they are in their own little kaleidoscope of excess or deficiency. And that will show itself through what we call the five elements within the physical body. And by regulating those five elements, which come from the kidneys, the lungs, the liver, the spleen, and the basically earth energy, which is hang on, did I miss something? Kidneys, liver, lungs, spleen, and heart. So those five organs have their own spiritual teacher and protector. And within Taoism, those teachers come from the heart has the red phoenix, the liver has the green dragon, the lungs have the white tiger, the kidneys have the black turtle and snake, and of course the spleen is earth energy. Now, when these are deficient or excessive and they're corrupted through that finite mind from the ego state, you will see it as such, and you will realize that, oh my goodness, I can, you hear one thing, but you think another. So more efficiently, it's like you start to realize, okay, what is my superpower? What is the sense that I start on that I get the most value of perception? And through cultivating the energy and regulating your relationship with those particular spirits, you will all of a sudden blossom into a very vivid imagination that can take charge of that present moment. And so when you think something, for me, for example, as a clear sense, everything is a black backdrop. So when I look at you, I see nothing but a black backdrop, and I see you in the center of that. And that has a charge to it. It has the energy potential. Your whole being, your flesh, your spirit, your energy body is very vibratory, and it is frequential, and it has its own imprinted, imbued state that is part of this electromagnetism, is part of this primordial knowing. And so I can sense into each one of those layers and experience it at any level I choose to. This is part of the mastery. And so for anyone that is starting, always the fundamentals is there is a Vesika point to everything. There is a center point, what we call the Wu Ji, the evidence of unification in everything. There are no exceptions. So when you start to cultivate, the most important part is the unification. The unification and realizing that when you get your imagination really tuned up and you see everything, not just in your third eye, but with your eyes open, oh, we're off to the races, my friend, because this is the very evidence that you need, and it will come in that psychokinesis form where you are getting that kinetic charge, you're getting that visceral charge, you're getting that somatic charge that can be validated for you. And it's not just a fleeting transitory moment of the mind, because all thoughts of your mind are not yours. Oh, no, that's another rabbit hole. But let's just start with the breath. And so for all the audience, anyone that's listening to this podcast, because I've already imbued this into the very fabric of this conversation, they can access evidence of that energetic charge because they may be on their journey of cultivating by breathing. And the respiration is the most powerful tool for self-realization. So breathing in for 9 count, and then holding it for a 9 count, and then exhaling for 9. And so instantly it will show itself. And I don't preload or front load people's experiences, right? So I need you, because I can see it and experience it, but as the seeker, as the individual that is remembering to return as a unified state, you must be able to explain it to me. And it will come in that vibratory frequential state that will be presented as this divinity code through the physical body, because this is your barometer, this is your tuning fork. So just by doing that exercise, I promise the audience, if they do that exercise, they will imprint an activation of their energetic potential instantaneously. And so what happens is, most commonly, if we're just going to give you a rundown, is you'll start to feel it in the most evident parts of the body: hands, feet, and head, more so throughout the whole head, because this has the most evidence of the neural pathways, and you can accumulate that and most quickly give yourself evidence. And so this is not the old Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi. That will energize instantaneously. If you follow my instruction from this conversation, they'll be like, holy moly. And then from that, you get a charge, right? So now you play with that charge and you go, holy moly, this is like maple syrup. I'm playing with this substance, we like to call it, because this is the currency of this material. This is the currency. If you are not up to scratch on it, you'll be surely mistaken, but you will come around to realizing that the dualistic evidence is the electromagnetism. And so the key, the center point, is the unification. That's where you get the secret source of the miracles. They come in that form: manifestation, magic, healing. We get deep into the magic because that's one of our favorite things to do. Is once you start mastering the energy potential, then you can start crafting and moving the energies, because everything within this space is a mirror of the universe. So we correlate with many magical rituals, but one of them specifically is a what we call the Taoist rites, the Taoist passage of rites, which is within what we call a transformational process. And a lot of it has to do with grids and star stepping and correlating with the constellations and planet Earth, because that's a mirroring effect. You'll find all evidence of that. I most recently did a remote viewing with a dear friend of mine, and we explored Mars because he was obsessed with Mars. Mm-hmm. And so Lao Tzu took us through a journey on that, my teacher. And, you have all these evident forms. Like if I channel Lao Tzu, I'm always in concert with him. I'm always communing with him. But sometimes it'll just be in a state of I'm speaking with him, he's speaking with me. Or furthermore, if I really want to rock someone's socks off, he will come into their space and move through their physical body, and they'll be like, holy shit, what is going on here? Furthermore, if I harness his energy and become the catalyst and conduit of this direct transmission, you'll experience it as a visceral thing through my physical body, as if you're standing in front of a fire and emanating that heat. You will feel the heat, you'll feel the transmission, you'll feel it viscerally, kinesthetically, somatically. And that's the power of what we're speaking of. And that's where I'm an OG on channeling in that sense, because you will know, I can, like, when I embody his spirit, I can put my hand over a flame and hold it there temporarily for more than seconds and move it away, and there's no damage to the physical flesh, because I've imbued that his spirit into my flesh at a subatomic level. This is a very traditional channeling sort of realization that many people, I think, we need to bring that back. There's a lot of people that are channeling that are still using the finite mind, and their personality is overshadowing energy potential. Everything is energy. So people open the gateway and they're like, oh, I'm feeling it, and I'm being told to do this or that. The evidence will be in your experience, right? And so you need to be able to realize it, whether it's through the information, through the physical experience, through the transmission. But I will say this: if you're you're channeling, an entity, a spirit, whatever, and it keeps giving you things that are bankrupt, more like from an intellect, that would be in the form of, mental, emotional state, being the highest currency of that would be fear, you probably might want to take a breath and reassess what it is that you're speaking of or talking to, because that keeps repeating itself. Mm-hmm. And so it's just evidence, because once you ascend to a certain level, it's just perfection. And you will get that information from whatever said teacher, spirit entity, it will show itself in the information that you get, and it will repeat itself, and you'll be like, holy moly, wow,
Mm.
it's like good to be me. Yes, it is.
There's beauty. That's the perfection, like you're talking about. And I think we've both come across, whether it's channelers or divine messengers who maybe are still in the identity form, and it's, if you're internally in a place of fear, well, of course, what you channel is gonna bring fear with it because, well, it's what you're putting out there. It's what you're attracting. It's kind of what we were alluding to earlier. You are what you're gonna attract exactly that. And I think there's true beauty in what you're speaking on, this true nature of who we are. It's more. This is what the idea of, and this is sometimes a difficult concept to grasp, but I think you've been able to articulate it perfectly, is that we aren't solely physical. If anything, our physicality is really an illusion because it is generated from our frequency. And the fact that you can hold your hand over a fire and the body isn't getting burnt, I mean, that's a perfect
Exactly.
example and evidence that, well, yeah, if you change the frequency, the body itself will manifest differently. And so therefore, what is what is truly impossible? Nothing in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And even the word impossible, if you do a little wordplay, it's just I'm possible. So the truth is right there. It's right in front of ourselves. And I think once we can almost come to an acceptance and understanding that we aren't just this physical body, if anything, we are who we think we are is very illusionary in its nature. And surrender, I think there's a process of surrender that's necessary to say, okay, this truth is too undeniable. I'm just going to go into it and, heart lead, brain follow. Don't need, don't need to rationalize it so much. I think that's where the true magic starts to come out, because, not all of it. I think in certain aspects it can be rationalized and brought into ways the mind likes, but that's not the essence of it. That's not how you're gonna truly experience it all, right? It's far beyond words, form. It's and that's the beauty of it. I mean, I like to write a lot of poetry, but sometimes even with poetry, I can't fully encapsulate the idea and the feeling through word form that it is that I'm actually writing about, right? Sometimes the words feel inefficient. And I think that's the fun in it, trying to explore and bring it out the best you can. But a lot of times it's beyond words. It's deeper than that. It's infinite in its nature. So how can you capture something that's infinite into something that's finite? You really can't, right? So, yeah, I think you're speaking on the deepest levels of truth, of reality itself, and that's what a lot of people in this day and age, I think, are looking for and seeking, because then all other truths, the seeking of it almost becomes unnecessary because you know what the truth is. It's right there, and you don't need to go out and find it anymore.
Right here. I mean, hey, you're so true, brother. I mean, the truth, and I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. That people go,
Mhm.
whoa. And an absolute truth, if someone gives you an absolute truth, you about face and run in the other direction, because that is for you to determine what the absolute truth is, not someone else's sort of agenda or their subjective finite mind that is creating these subsections, these compartmentalized expressions of truth, because that will be revealed to you through the surrender, the sacrifice. It is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing the limited for the unlimited. You realize that it is nothing more than that. When you let go of your personality, when you let go of your identity, you become fully realized, you become whole, and you'll feel it as an empowerment, as all the energy that you have sacrificed will be returned to you, as your gift is your offering. And
Mhm.
that's where people go, whoa. Because a lot of students, they'll start off with, oh, I want to learn the healing, the levitation. I used to have got a lot of fun out of just pulling my arm up, drawing a skewer through it, pulling it out. There's no entry or exit point, and people go, what the Well, this is just a form of materializing and transmuting the energy, and you're creating anesthesia on a subatomic level. And I don't feel anything. And nor, furthermore, do you see the entry or exit point, because it instantly is transmuted back to its original state. This is a mastery. Not so much now, I couldn't be bothered, but you see the evidence of the excitement of it as you acquire these states. And furthermore, I'll be like, okay, these are all parts of you becoming whole and remembering who you are, which is the most important thing. But you will, at some point, you will become whole. The need to keep repeating it will be unnecessary because you're already whole. It's like just when people go outside of themselves to find their energy, to find their, some people would diminish it, their values, to find their answers. It's always inside. It's never outside. So, the allure of delusional state of, oh, I bought a cup, or I bought an object, or I started a relationship that was necessary for me to find out what love was, or what my true desire of what is. Once you obtain that, if you are still deficient, it will return to such. Mm-hmm. It's not returning you to whole. There is no mistake. Let me tell you, the audience, very clearly, when you are whole, you are all knowing, you are all now, you are all embodying, you will feel it, and it will be undeniable. You will have an amount of energy that goes beyond description. And that's the truth. That's the true nature of reality. That's the true nature of who you are. And you will not have to find it outside of yourself, which is where everyone seems to keep looking. Mm-hmm. And so always understand that Taoist alchemy is for you to return and remember who you are through the self-mastery. Furthermore, if I had to do a plug right now for my book I'm just releasing, it's called Return, The Immortal's Path to Self-Mastery Through the Lens of Taoist Alchemy. Mm-hmm. And there you find all the fundamental ascension that is necessary to return to that knowing state. And so for a Taoist, it's physical body, energy body, spiritual body, sun body, earth body, moon body, oneness body, ultimate body, and then being with all things. And that accelerated ascension gives you the repeatable knowing, which is so important. It's like, it's a permanence. You are permanent as all things. You are unlimited, abundant, timeless, endless, limitless. Yet you are transitory when trapped in that psyche, that finite mind, and you believe that you are the flesh and blood. This is the delusion. And when you access that, just like you're upping a level in a video game, holy moly, the superpowers come out. And that's part of that evidence. And you use that to help people. And this is purely from a Taoist perspective. I want people to understand there are a million ways up the mountain. There are infinite ways to be self-realized. People like gravitating to Taoist alchemy because it gives them a substantive, tangible state that they can repeat and know it to be true. And that's part of their journey. It may or may not be part of the audience journeys that listening to us, but it is not an absolute. Understand this. It's just a form of mastery that you lay on top of your own journey to be self-realized. And so the energy potential is, in our opinion, most important for your self-realization, that this is the currency. And so, when you get down that path and someone has these experiences, and we always look at your self-realization as two sides of the mountain. One's yin, one's yang. You're going up each side of the mountain, merging the two together and being realized as being all things. This is the power of a Taoist path. And it's a power of endless amount of indigenous practices. You just have to find your way to that Vesika point through that cultivational practice, through that unification, and then show evidence of that. And so ultimately a Taoist path is to be the ambassador to planet Earth, as they're ambassadors to all different facets of the diamond being the universe. Throughout the universe, there are ambassadors just like us that are there to cultivate and raise the frequency from a humanistic perspective to return to your unification and raise that And that comes in that resonant form, which then reflects on the consciousness, and the conscious collective is raised. And furthermore, as our dear friend James Tunney would say, realize the spiritual consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that spiritual consciousness will come in that form of servitude and selflessness. And you will not be able to fight it. It will not be something of the mind. You cannot create it in the mind. It is a visceral thing. It is an action. It's action and inaction. Now, when we talk about Wu Wei as effortless action, effortless effort, the action that people want to apply to the sum of all things, the equation of all things, where you have thought, you have a feeling, and then you have an action. It comes in the form of the breath, and so we talk about it. A dear friend of mine, E, from a channel called Dharma, Why Dharma,
Mm-hmm.
he refers to it as being done by the Tao. Just be done. You're being done.
Mm.
You do nothing and you do everything at the same time. And this is where a lot of people get perplexed. It's like you get the coaches, the mentors, the manifestation coaches, like, now you have a thought, you have to visualize it, then you must act on it. From a Taoist perspective, action is within the breath, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. We don't call it Wu Wei for nothing, that when you are unified, your creation will be instantaneous. You think it and it's realized.
Mm.
If you think it, healing is instant. If you think it, manifestation is instant. If you think it, magic is instant. And furthermore, it has imperium over every place, person, or thing, any energy, spirit, and God, any matter, chi, or spirit is realized in that state as you are now.
Mm.
Amen to that.
Amen. That is beautiful. Well, and I think what's so telling of this and what you've spoken to is the fact that sometimes when we're looking at a lot of these like concepts, our mind wants to create a limitation around it in the sense where I need to do this to access this, right? Or, there's a pathway towards it. But what you're saying, and what I agree because I feel it, is that it is infinite in its nature, and this can be and is meant to be really a state of being that is our baseline state of awareness, right? Instead of something that, sometimes we outsource the mystical and outsource God to, this is a peak experience that only comes so many times in our life, right? Or, it's like, but then we go back to mundane reality. And what you're speaking to, this is baseline reality. This is what we're meant to be embodying and what we can embody and then walk through life in that fashion. And it's always right here, right now. You're meant to live in it, right? And we don't need to limit ourselves in that we can only access it if this or that, or when I do this or when I do that, or when I feel worthy of it, right? It's it's it is the baseline. And right, we don't need to limit ourselves in that way, because the second we're creating limitations, that's a part of ourselves that's not fully whole or integrated, or it feels fractured or separate, right? So basically what you're saying, this is baseline reality. This is, and it's not something that we need to
You just step
limit
out of the
ourselves in.
way. You just
Right.
step out of the way, and you will be self-realized.
Mm.
Your finite mind, your personality is what's holding you back. The ego state. These are the very limitation. And once you get that charge, that electromagnetism unification, it's just like moving energy is what this is. This is the currency. You might call it your personality, a car, a bottle, a physical healing, a mental, emotional state. It's still all energy.
Mm.
And this is where people need to be reminded and remember that, and that the construct and the limitation is met within the ego state. It's met there, and it can stay there if you're not realized to some degree that it can be instantaneous. Like if we watered this down to mirror neurons within the physical body,
Hmm.
This is set evidence, right? So what does that mean neurologically? Let's just talk about this, because mirror neurons literally give evidence of the mirrored state that we're in, that all is one, one is all. What's happening outside of you is happening inside of you. You are the micro of a macro of all things. And so when you exhibit mirror neurons, this would be an example of how quickly you attune and imbue to this state, and you saturate it, and you are now. For example, I would give you an example of this. My kids are not a fan of me doing story time, right? So, oh, daddy's going to do story time, he's going to cheat. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because it'll be like, okay, everyone, and they all sort of they like commune together. So I've got 6 of them. 5 of them are more conscious. The youngest one just turned 1. But like, it's very easy. As you embody that state, I connect with everyone's heart, and then I start mimicking their respiration. And by mimicking their respiration, they're now in this state of knowing, and that I'm in their field, they're in my field. And furthermore, I then start to take them down the path of, it's story time, and let's talk about that. And by me changing my respiration, it has imperium over their respiration. This is the mirrored effect. And so all of a sudden, hey, but dad, you're not going to care. It's like, we're feeling very relaxed right now, and let's go into a deeper story. And I already changed the gears, and they literally go lights out. Anyway, daddy, back to Netflix. Thank you very much. And this is evidence of how quickly you can merge into that state of awareness. Now, something more historical that people would be fundamentally use as evidence would be the 4-minute mile. So the 4-minute mile in history was not possible by a human being at that point. They had no evidence that anyone could ever be able to break the 4-minute mile. It was just, it was a fantasy. There's no way. The human biology does not have the ability to do that. But through that historical moment that hadn't been achieved in history, and all of a sudden it was achieved within that same breath of achieved by one person, it turned within the same day, 10 people, 20 people, 1,000 people, 5,000 people. All of a sudden they're achieving this because it's possible, but it's in contemplation form for most. And their evidence is that they saw another human being like themselves achieve this impossible biological achievement. And so when they did that, they gave them and brought their energy back to whole, and then they were able to achieve it themselves. This is the very mirroring effect. Furthermore, if you go to a concert, a football game, whatever it is, there is an embodied state that is happening in the audience where you feel their expression, you feel their excitement. Whether someone hits the ball or they sing a high note, you're experiencing it as unified. This is a state of creation. This really is a state of, if you've got any hang-ups and you want to get healed, go to the local concert and embody that energy and watch that creator that you're bearing witness to mirror that energy back to you. And their highest point of their musical creation is where you can tap into that unification and said, heal yourself. It's that simple. And you will remember now, once you get a taste of it, is like what I call being bitten by the spiritual dragon. You get a taste, you get a glimpse, and now you must find a way to master that so it's repeatable and it's not transitory. But that's the said evidence. These are examples that people can just walk right into and use that. And furthermore, as a visceral thing, we go very deeply into radiesthesia and sensation as the very evidence, because this is how you unify. This is like I find it really perplexing when people talk about the subtle body. There's nothing subtle about energy, and most people, when they do that, when they talk in that way as a level of ascension, they diminish and basically create their own limitation for that energy potential. Energy is not subtle. And what happens is when you ascend, it becomes more palpable. It's not airy, fairy, light. I can't feel it anymore. I'm in the stars playing with the angels. No, it becomes absolutely palpable and tangible within this material. This is the thing that people need to understand. As you ascend, it becomes more evident. You can sample anything at will. to the intricacies of that energetic profile and how expansive it is, and have all different types of realizations. And this is what we call body Taoism within Taoism. I teach people to find ley lines, power centers, all these vortices. And when you have your eyes open and you're experiencing this, like, hey, he didn't suggest anything. It wasn't like, oh, he told me that, so I felt it. I will not preload. Precognition is part of the experience, but I won't preload your mind with an expectation. You have to be able to experience it and then explain it to me, because it will come in that visceral form. And people go, "Whoa, I've never experienced that before." You're remembering who you are. And this is everywhere. Everything comes in this currency. And it gets really exciting when people experience energy for the first time consciously. They're like, whoa, this is amazing. It's like, oh, yeah, let's go and look at the power center over here and the vortices over here and the energy potential, the ley lines. And they're like, this is real. Yeah. If you didn't have an electromagnetic field running through your body right now, you'd be dead.
Mm-hmm.
This is the evidence of it. It's like, whoa, wow, this is so exciting. This is the Sherlock to your Watson, that elementary moment. And it's so exciting. I love it. I'm childlike in my nature. Every day I wake up and it's as if the first time I ever experienced it. And I think furthermore, that's through my own admission, that is embodying and nurturing this state and maintaining it as one of the self-realized moments.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. Every day feels like a new start, to kind of put it in the context of like the hero's journey in a sense, just, kind of the fool wandering off into the wilderness and the adventure, and, seeing what comes out of it, what's there to explore, what's there to experience. And it's always new. It's never the same. And that's the beauty of it. And it's, if we just kind of remember who we are, open ourselves up to the world will open itself back up to us, because we're one and the same. It's all one unified field, and that's truly where the magic is, man. And I can tell in how you even present and articulate the concepts that you yourself are embodying in them, because there's a very big energetic difference between somebody and when it's just more intellectual versus when it is embodied wisdom. And I think that embodied wisdom and the presentation of that is really what this world needs right now, more so than just theorizing and intellectualizing, because we've done enough of that over the course of human history, I believe. We come up with every theory under the sun, but coming back to the ultimate truth, that is, I think, the medicine for modern day society to return to our roots and to remember who we are. And then the world that we create from that, it's going to be, I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but it'll be rooted in the truth. So therefore, and that truth is pretty beautiful. So I think therefore that world will be pretty beautiful at the end of the day, right?
The remedy, my dear friend, the remedy. It's
Hmm.
like it really is when you can be self-realized, and that the experience is all we have. The now moment is all we have, and that creator will show itself as one, as you put it, a unified state, a oneness, as a physics intellectual mind would call the singular.
Hmm.
And so this is kind of where we go past that into the experiential moment of now.
Right.
When that merges together, the simplicity of prayer, which is the merging of yin and yang, shows itself. And you can feel it because it's embodied, because all that infrastructure has never left you. It just needs to be awakened to who you are.
Right. Exactly. The awakening. And I think we're in a moment of not just individual, but collective awakening in a lot of ways, as we walk through this world. I'm very optimistic and hopeful because of this infinite truth. And I will say, I'm feeling very supercharged right now in this truth through this conversation. So this has been a beautiful remembering, and for me, because I have my spiritual practices that I do, and but am I always walking through life supercharged? More than I used to be. But this is the state of awareness that I look for and relish in. So, incredibly grateful for you and for this conversation. And I think we're gonna have to plan on a part two
A part
because
two would be welcome, my friend. It's been absolutely wonderful. I'm very grateful for you and creating an incredible community that that's really that self-realization,
Mm,
and, we're brothers from another mother, and Mr. Tunney is my brother, and
yes,
how incredibly amazing he is, and furthermore remembering our bond and our relationship in this now moment. It's very exciting. So I want to thank
absolutely.
you so much for having this conversation today.
100%, man. We should maybe sometime we should plan a conversation between the three of us with me, you, and James. I think there'd be a lot of magic in that. And
Would
I know
love it.
James would be open to it as well because this
Yeah, yeah.
it
I
was
love it. I love it, brother. Well, thank you so much. And
absolutely, brother. And where can the listeners go, further into, I know you
yeah,
have your podcast and website.
yeah,
Is what sort of offerings might you have for the listeners and how they
yeah,
can continue to
yeah,
engage in this?
yeah, yeah. So in the social sphere and interweb, I have the offerings of the way 126 .com, which is basically ground zero for some of my teachings. Furthermore, I created an app that helps you self-realized over several weeks. If someone wants to go on a journey of energizing literally 81 energy centers of their energetic body, that's almost 2 years worth of material. If you just want to have imperium over your mental emotional state and you don't want to be subject to the mundane reality, and you can take charge of how you feel, the state of your reality right now, I would offer the contemplation of merging themselves with the 9 weeks on the app, which basically takes someone from a zero to a hero. You will instantly have access to that visceral kinesthetic response through the visual and audible experience. And you will have power over it, because the first time you do it, I give people an Easter egg to measure their spiritual development within the first 27 minutes.
Mm,
And so the most important thing is you need to be able to find that it's not blind faith, that your investment in this timeline of currency of the electromagnetism is evident through your mastery. It must be validated every time you experience it, not just this just use the blind faith, sit in the lotus position, and eventually you'll find it. No, through that lens and developing your sensory perception, I have so many people that just get super excited. I'm an attorney, I'm a judge, I'm a janitor, I'm a light worker, a massage therapist, a Chinese medicine doctor, a chiropractor, and they have complete dominion over their emotion and mental emotional states within 9 weeks.
mm,
When you take charge of that, because the material is imbued, it's imprinted from my teacher. This is not just like, oh, it's a meditation. That's why it's not called a meditation, it's called an experience. And you go through and activate the first 9 energy centers of your physical body, and then you have charge of it. It's literally equivalent to 9 weeks of training, is equivalent to maybe one visit to your local therapist that will not materialize to anything, but you've invested in your future, because you walk away with that empowerment and that nurturing that's embedded and imprinted into your physical body and tuned at that imprinted level. So you will be able to focus on something, move the emotions off the screen like an icon.
mm.
And that's how it should be. So there is that. And then I have my podcast and teachings with the Tao Teaching, and I have a book coming out. So people can find and discover a little bit more about themselves and help. I'm here to help you remember who you are.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love that, man. I love it. And I'll link all of that in the episode show notes. And what's funny is when I encapsulate my own work, whether it's podcast, poetry, different writings, I say the exact same thing. With all of it, I say, my job is to help you remember who you are. So we're on the same mission, brother. That's exactly what we're doing.
Love it, brother. Love it.
No wonder why this resonates as it does. So
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, the work you're doing, and I'm feeling ready to go into the rest of the day supercharged and in alignment. So You know, that
Beautiful.
this is what it's all about.
That's
And
exactly what it's about.
thank you to all the listeners for tuning in as well. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Special thank you to San Qing for coming on the Fifth Dimension. This definitely won't be the last conversation him and I have. And be sure to subscribe to his podcast, The Way 126 Experience, as I'm going to be making an appearance on there. So the conversation's just going to keep on rolling, baby. I love it. Um, really, really profound information. And if you're not feeling charged up after a conversation like that, I don't know what'll do it for you. But a special thank you to San Chang for coming on the fifth dimension and raising us into the fifth dimension. If you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe, whatever platform you're on, 5-star review. Subscribe on YouTube, leave a comment, say hello. Head on over to Substack, mcdermott.substack.com, mcdermod.substack.com. You can book a tarot reading with me one-on-one. If you use the code 5D, it is 20% off. And if you buy two, we'll schedule three. Two for the price of three with 20% off. That's a pretty good deal if you ask me. All my poetry books are available on Amazon. The Final Judgment, Two Martial Love Against Tyranny, and the Mystical Collection are all there. And be sure to check out the Facebook page. Tranquil Desires, our one and only official sponsor here on the Fifth Dimension Podcast out in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Make sure you stop in if you're on a road trip or if you live in South Dakota, or heck, make a trip here just to go to Tranquil Desires. It'll be worth it. I promise you. I promise you. You can say what's up. You can tell me you're in town. We'll hang out. We'll do something. We'll go explore the mystical lands here in South Dakota. It's the way to do it. I promise you. I promise. That's going to wrap up this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to subscribe. Many great podcasts coming your way in the very near future. I'll see you all next time. So long.